President Trump has won a mandate, vanquished his opponents in a resounding way. Is it time now to take the high road? Forgive and forget? Or is it time for retribution? What say you? I'm Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner. The number here is 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. The text number is 70470. This was a vicious campaign with Democrats and mainstream media and rhinos hitting as low as they could possibly punch against President Trump. I mean, you remember the comparisons to Hitler, right? And if you don't, I have a few just to remind you. This is Jake Tapper over on CNN. Cut 40, please, Mike.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler is once again alive and well on a national political stage. This time, of course, in the United States. This time given life by former president and current Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump.
You know, that's nice touch, don't you? Hitler is alive and well again. Hillary Clinton on The View compared Trump to Hitler, saying Hitler didn't tell people what he was going to do. Trump actually is giving us a heads up and telling us. So he's a little bit smarter than Hitler, but he's Hitler is what she's saying. Cut 42.
People would get legitimately elected, and then they would try to do away with elections and do away with opposition and do away with a free press. And you could see it in countries where, well, Hitler was duly elected.
That's right.
Right? And so all of a sudden, somebody with those tendencies, those dictatorial, authoritarian tendencies, would be like, oh, okay, we're going to shut this down. We're going to throw these people in jail. And they didn't usually telegraph that. Trump is telling us what he intends to do.
That's so, is he smarter or is he more stupid than Hitler? But he's Hitler nonetheless. Then Claire McCaskill, senator from Missouri, said Trump is even more dangerous than Hitler. Cut 41. Yes, 41.
Let me even bring in what I think is also a very dangerous thread to this conversation. A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler and the use of the terminology like vermin and the drive that those men had towards autocracy and dictatorship. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous, and that is he has no philosophy he believes in. He is not trying to expand the boundaries of the United States of America. He's not trying to overcome a neighboring country like Putin is in Ukraine. He is not going for some grandiose scheme of international dominance. All he wants is to look in the mirror and see a guy who's president.
You know, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. These people who are trying to thwack him. You know, networks. The networks basically standardizing their approach against him with the cries of fascism and Hitlerism and comments that compared him to Mussolini and Hitler. That's just the tip. You also had the DAs bringing spurious charges, made up crimes against him. You had judges allowing specious civil suits, and you had, members of Congress on the J6 committee essentially colluding with witnesses to bring in false testimony. And this is all in a zeal to brand Donald Trump a traitor and to stop him from ever being elected again. That was all that everything was about. The past 4 years of persecution. How'd that work out for them? Given the fact that all their efforts basically had the same effect as spitting into the wind, should Donald Trump forgive his enemies and essentially turn the other cheek? Is retribution more the order of the day? That's my question for you. And actually, I'm going to make that the Kuhner Report poll question. which is sponsored by Mario's Roofing, Siding, and Windows. You can take it on or at X, at the Kuhner Report, or on our website, wrko.com/Kuhner. Should Donald Trump exact retribution from those who persecuted him for the past 4 years, or should he turn the other cheek? You know, is it time for forgiveness and let's move on? And if, in fact, vengeance is the name of the game, and you think it's appropriate right now, should it be across the board? Should it be raise and burn, get everybody, or just the egregious offenders? For instance, I'm going to give you an example. In the media, ABC has already had their comeuppance in the form of a $16 million settlement for slander that came about because of an interview George Stephanopoulos did with Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina. And I want you to hear exactly what happened. Stephanopoulos, who had been warned by his executive producers not to mention the word rape in conjunction with the E. Jean Carroll trial for defamation. And he couldn't help himself. And he's trying to shame Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, for supporting Donald Trump as a woman. He's saying, you're a woman. How can you possibly support a man who's raped or who's found liable for rape, is what he said, of another woman. And Nancy Mace exploded on him. It was a thing to behold. She's like, first of all, you know, I am a rape victim, so don't try to shame me for my political beliefs. And this is not accurate. What happened? I want you to hear the whole thing. Cut 43.
We've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not going to do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald
Trump. No, you are shaming me.
I think he was trying to shame her. How else do you say, you know, you're supporting a man found liable for rape? But it continued. Cut 43A.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they...
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
I agree with her. That's one of the reasons why women won't come forward. But he wasn't done yet. 43B.
Endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
I agree with everything Nancy May said, but notice that twice, 3 times, 4 times, George Stephanopoulos used the word rape after his executive producer said, don't under any, and texted him, and I mean, it's in writing too, don't ever mention rape, don't mention rape, and there he goes. Now, just to set the record straight, in May of 2023, a Manhattan jury ordered Trump to pay $5 million to E. Jean Carroll after finding him liable for sexually abusing her at Barney's in 1996, and then defaming her in his statements when he denied those allegations. It was a bad trial, and it's going to appeal as it should. However, the point is, he was never found liable for rape. Rape was not part of that trial. That's not what happened. So George completely and utterly disregarded what he was told to do and did what he wanted to do, which was call Donald Trump a rapist. And for that, I mean, it's just an appalling thing to do. And for that, now ABC has agreed to pay $16 million to settle that defamation lawsuit. And by the way, that money is going to the Presidential Foundation and Museum to be established for Donald Trump as president of the United States. In other words, it's to his library. And $1 million went to Donald Trump for his attorneys and filing they had to pay for for Donald Trump's attorneys to file the lawsuit. And they have to apologize. They have to, in writing and on the air, apologize, all of which they've done. You'd think that Stephanopoulos would be fired for this, right? He hasn't been. His contract is renewed. However, it's renewed for a much decreased salary. They told him he had to take a pay cut. Whether he's going to take that or not, I don't know. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Should he exact retribution or forgive? This is the Kuhner Report. 617-266-6868. 617-266-6868 is the number here. The text number is 70470. I'm Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. Should Donald Trump exact retribution from those that have persecuted him or forgive? Maybe not forget, but forgive. Some are already feeling the pain of their misdeeds, and I just mentioned George Stephanopoulos and ABC before the break. Basically, George Stephanopoulos is apoplectic and is said to be humiliated by staffers there by the network's decision to pay the $16 million to settle the defamation lawsuit brought by President Trump for him calling him basically a rapist on the air. And for he may be humiliated. He's not fired, but he may be humiliated. And he's not the only person or member of the press, I should say, that's apoplectic about the settlement. It's reverberating throughout the press. They are terrified and they are furious. Here is Chuck Todd at NBC calling the settlement a gut punch. Cut 16.
This was stunning to me and absolutely a gut punch to anybody that works at a major media company, because I think it does sets a precedent that is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to get out from under potentially. I just, I think the risk of losing this suit was 5%.
Right.
Like 50%.
For ABC.
For ABC. So, this was a decision to buy off a bad PR.
I think it was more than buying. $16 million just for buying off bad PR. I think more along the lines of, it's called defamation. He slandered President Trump and they knew it. And they knew it. Chuck Todd is running scared. So is Jim Acosta over at CNN. And he's calling on media outlets to stand firm against President Trump's effort to use his legal system to hold the press accountable. Well, the press doesn't hold themselves accountable. They think it's okay to lie. So why shouldn't the courts do it? That's basically what President Trump is doing here. He's using the courts. He's not weaponizing the DOJ the way other administrations have done to go after them. He is, in fact, using the courts. That is his remedy. That's your remedy. That's my remedy. All of us are allowed to do that. Now, over at MSNBC, Simone Sanders appears to have gotten her network into a little more hot water by basically talking about this settlement with Stephanopoulos and saying, doubling down on it, saying that his statement was true. Cut number 12.
The press is in a difficult position. Everyone understands that. That doesn't change the obligation to be straightforward and objective when it comes to Donald Trump.
I would just say, I mean, this feels like it has a real chilling effect. Like, I mean, shout out to the standards department. Okay, standards is always making sure that we are keeping the bar high and substantive and accurate. But what George Stephanopoulos said in that interview, I mean, it seems to hold up with what the judge said after the fact. And now his news organization and himself, George Stephanopoulos himself, is paying $1 million of his own money to the lawyers, and ABC at $15 million. It's insane.
Yeah. Okay. So she just basically said, she reiterated that she said that what Stephanopoulos said was true. I think MSNBC needs to get their checkbook out, because she just reiterated slander, essentially. And ABC is not the only media outlet that Trump has filed a lawsuit against. He also filed a lawsuit against pollster J.N. Seltzer due to her polls in the days before the election, which had absurdly showed him trailing Vice President Harris by 3 points in Iowa. So his attorneys have filed this 29-page lawsuit this week in the Iowa District Court for Polk County, seeking a jury trial. They say that the defendants, including Seltzer and her employer there, the Des Moines Register, who sponsored the poll, and its parent company, Gannett Company, and Tribune Company, engaged in election interference to benefit Harris. The poll was conducted at the end of October, just, days before the election, was an extreme outlier. It found that Harris had 47% to 44% edge on Trump, in the state that he formerly won. Every other poll regarding Trump versus Harris, recognized, that Trump was ahead. Every other poll. So it was obviously, intended to create a false narrative of inevitability for Harris in the final weeks of the election. And because they had such a huge readership, they said, the suit says that she had a significant and impactful opportunity to deceive voters. And she's not the only pollster to engage in this corrupt practice. She had a huge platform and following, a significant impact, and she knows that this type of manipulation creates a narrative, that they're fighting against. So that's what's going on. I mean, so he is filing civil suits. That's the remedy you're supposed to file, isn't it? So are you comfortable with that? We'll be right back. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack sitting in for Jeff Kuhner. The number here is 617-266-6868. Our text number, 70470. We're talking about President Trump's options for dealing with those who persecuted him and may have lied, cheated, defamed, threatened, and committed illegal acts to do so. Is retribution the order of the day? So far, he has utilized the courts for defamation in a couple of instances. Is that appropriate? Scott Jennings over at CNN says, go for it, Mr. President. Cut 15, please.
Are you worried at all about this, Scott, just where it could go? Not just the Donald Trump of it all, but, I mean, if he's creating precedent, it's for everybody.
Well, when you introduced, Michael, you used the word narratives, and I think one of the reasons Republicans are cheering on this muscular attitude from Trump and pushing back against some of this is because Republicans feel like constantly media organizations, especially in the throes of campaigns, work overtime to create false narratives that may shape the contours of the election. Look what happened. When this poll came out in Iowa, the entire English-speaking world was talking about the gold standard pollster, and Harris has this momentum, and ultimately what we were told was complete garbage. And if you talked to pollsters at the time, they would have told you, this is not real, this methodology is not good anymore. But that's not what people chose to run with because it fit what most people in the press wanted the narrative to be. So he's pushing back on that. I don't frankly have a problem with it, and if they capitulate, it's because they don't want to go through the discovery and what that might show.
I agree with him completely. I think he has it. I think Donald Trump currently is utilizing what he's supposed to utilize, which is the courts. That's how I'm supposed to deal with stuff. If somebody goes after me, that's how you're supposed to deal with it. So why should it be any different for him that he should also be able to deal with it? Wardell in West Roxbury, welcome to WRKL. Wardell, how are you?
Sandy, happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too, sir. Merry Christmas.
I just want you to give me a second. You know, I just turned 60 this year, so I'm trying to get used to it. So, here is my scenario. How do you vote a president in, and then all of a sudden, it's let's get even? I don't care what you did. Triumph is triumph. How do you do that? Just explain it to me. Give me a couple of words.
I don't understand what your question is.
My question is, you're saying, how does Trump get even with people who lashed out at him that didn't want him to become the president?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Wardell, you just asked me to respond to you, and I'm telling you that's not what I said. I didn't say he's lashing out at people who didn't like him. I'm saying he's lashing out at people who lied about him, who cheated about him, who slandered him, who may have broken the law to hurt him. That's what I'm saying, not people who disagreed with him. That's a completely different thing.
Let me just finish, and you can cut me off, whatever you want to do.
Okay, Wardell, stop right there, because we're just going to get something straight. I did let you finish. I asked you to clarify. You did. I responded, and then I gave the mic back to you. So don't try to play the victim that I'm going to try to cut you off, because we both know that's not what I did. Now I'm turning the mic back to you. Go ahead and explain to me what your question is if I did not just answer it.
Okay. My thing is, what you don't understand, and I'm saying you and other people, step of office, whoever, is that Donald Trump is president. I used to call this station all the time, and I wanted them to know that Obama was president. Don't call him Obama, call him President Obama. Just like we call President Donald Trump. We want to make sure that we get that established. See, when you say things like president, it's a sign of respect.
Okay, Wardell, I have always called President Obama, President Obama. I have always called President Biden, President Biden, and I've always called President Trump, President Trump. What does that have to do with our current conversation?
I'm about to tell you. I just want to get all that out of the way so you can put it in the pot and understand what I'm saying. President Trump, he doesn't have to go after anybody. His job is done. I'm a military man. His job is done. There is no need to go after anybody. What we need to do is fix America. That's all we have to do. All is getting even. Let me.
So you're for forgiveness, is what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let me just finish. What I'm saying is all this rhetoric about getting even, doing this, doing that. Let's stay focused on what needs to be done. There is no more Biden. Biden's term is over.
Not yet. He's still there till January 20th, Wardell. Hasn't gone anywhere. And here's the thing. You can, walk and chew gum at the same time. President Trump is perfectly capable of having his lawyers file civil suits against people and still run the country. I don't think that that's really going to be a big problem. So it's not, the option isn't, wreak havoc on people or wreak retribution or do the country or focus on the country. You can do both. So the question actually is, do you forgive these people and just move on, or do you exact some kind of retribution, try to teach some kind of lesson? That's what the options are, Wardell. It's not ignore everything and not make any decision at all. So he can do both. So given that he can, which do you say? Are you saying forgiveness, forgive them and move on, or are you saying, no, you got to teach them a lesson?
My point is this, and I'm not trying to interrupt you. I'm not trying to be rude, Sandy, because you've been around for a minute. You know what I'm saying? I've been listening to you for a while. I've been listening probably before you even started coming on. But my point is, we need to stop this.
Okay.
We need to stop this. Let me just finish. We need to stop this rhetoric. We need to stop trying to turn people on people. We need to stop this, because if it's done, it's done. Let's move on. Let's do what we have to do. We don't have to. If that's the only thing you guys have to talk about. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about how the grocery is. Let's talk about how the housing is. Let's talk about how, just anything else.
We do, Wardell. We talk about all of those things. Those are all things that we talk about and we deal with every single day. But just because we want to talk about what would be the appropriate thing for Donald Trump to do today doesn't mean we ignore all those other things. And I appreciate your perspective. And I do think a certain amount of move on is required in order for us to all to move forward. But some people feel that retribution is necessary in order for others to move on. And I'll give you an example of why I'm saying that. On the text line, somebody brought it up and I was going to mention it. The text line, by the way, is 70470. They say yesterday, Whoopi Goldberg, also of ABC, on air live, said that somebody needs to kill Trump. She suggested tripping him down a flight of stairs, and her producer forced her to clean up her statement later in the show. She excused calling for his assassination, saying it was a Christmas joke. And I have the cut just so that you know exactly what she said, and you don't think I'm paraphrasing something. Cut 67, please, Mike.
Who is in charge? Because I've been saying it for a while.
Yes, you have.
I've been saying that I think Elon Musk believes he's president. I do.
Well, you've been calling him vice president.
I've called him vice president. I called him president because I don't know what JD is doing. I hardly ever say. I don't remember last time we even talked about JD.
You're right. He's planning the presidency when they get rid of Trump.
So you think it's Musk Vance?
Possible.
Hey, you know who? Stay away from the stairways. Because, people put the leg out to trip you going down the stairs. Watch out.
So that's Whoopi Goldberg. And so I think the point of bringing people who want retribution and who approve it, like Scott Jennings on CNN, who say that retribution is positive, is that Whoopi Goldberg has not learned the lesson, don't threaten assassination on a president. She's still making nasty, and a president who's had 2 assassination attempts already. And she thinks it's funny, a quote, Christmas joke. A civil lawsuit brought against ABC and George Stephanopoulos has, they are right, a chilling effect. But it's not a chilling effect as in don't tell the truth. It's a chilling effect as in do tell the truth. Don't defame people. Don't make jokes about killing a man when people will take you up on it. That's what a civil suit does. And that's what Donald Trump has brought. So I think that some people need that to move on. To your point, people needing to move on. I don't disagree that people need to move on. But some people need to see more guardrails in place, and some of those are only brought when you do things like bring civil suit. Thank you for the call, Wardell. I appreciate it. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack. This is the Kuhner Report. Merry Christmas, everybody. So the number here is 617-266-6868. Forgive and move on, or exact some kind of retribution and move on. Which should President Trump do? Our text number is 70470. On the text line, 617 says, Wardell is right about moving on and forgiveness, but Trump needs to defend himself from the people who are saying untrue things about him. They have not stopped since June 2015 when Trump came down the escalator. I wish Wardell could advise the communists in the media and Congress to stop and move on as well. Well, yeah, I agree with you. And then Merry Christmas to all. I appreciate that. And then 603 says there must be consequences for lying and for physical threats. I don't disagree with that either. I think there has to be consequences at some point for things you're doing. And I think we have built-in methods of dealing with this, one of which is the courts and civil suits, and that's what President Trump is doing so far. So if he's doing that, I think that is appropriate. That's not, for instance, weaponizing the DOJ into lawfare, like some other administrations have done. This is using the civil courts to say, hey, these people lied. And ABC chose to back down because I think they knew they had a real problem on their hands. And we'll see if Gannett and that pollster in Iowa do the same thing, because it looks pretty clear cut there too. But only time will tell. And only time will tell if he brings more lawsuits. And the question is, are they appropriate? Should he go further? Is retribution at all, revenge at all appropriate? Or should he just turn the other cheek? You know, that's the big issue. Because as Wardell said, he has won. So he's won. That's the best revenge that you could possibly have. Does he need to take it further? Let's talk to Scott in Maine. Scott, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm good. Merry Christmas and good morning.
To you too, Scott.
Yes, I personally don't like the way you framed it. Forgiveness or revenge or retribution. That sounds like somebody trying to get back at somebody because they were given some kind of negative fashion on them.
Well, retribution, actually, Scott, is not that. Retribution is righteousness. Righteousness, punishment dealt with righteousness. So, meaning you are right, and they did hurt you, and you are in the right. That's what retribution is. So it's not just because I don't like you, or, you know, that's, we're not talking about, you know, penny ante stuff or childish type of thing. We're talking about righteous indignation and retribution.
All right. So for so long, people have, and I'm sure you've heard this by many people, for so long, people have been getting away with everything. There's no repercussions, it seems. So President Trump said he was going to bring back the rule of law. And if somebody has broken the law, well, it's not retribution, it's breaking the law, and they're being held accountable, and justice should be served. I just don't see any way around it. I don't see any problem with him going through the court process and righting the crimes and lawlessness that's gone on. I mean, because if you don't hold somebody accountable, they're going to keep doing it. And if they're going to keep breaking the law, then what's to stop them? They're just going to run rampant. So I think more examples have to be made so people take back, give it a second thought to even thinking about breaking the law again.
Yeah, well, I think that that's a very valid approach to this, and I think one which Donald Trump shares, and I think that's why you see these civil lawsuits coming up. But there are a lot of other issues besides just the media civil suits that is the reason why I brought this topic up. And the media is only the beginning. What about, you know, the DAs who brought tortured criminal charges against Donald Trump? You know, you have Alvin Bragg and Letitia James in New York. And just this week, in regard to those particular charges, Judge Merchan rejected the Trump attorney request to dismiss the charges brought by Bragg on the basis of presidential immunity. So that lawsuit may be stayed, but it's still going on. So that's a weaponization of this same system that Donald Trump is using in a legitimate fashion to bring to deal with the defamation lawsuits. Then you've got Letitia James. You know, he's tried to walk away from this $486 million civil fraud against him. But her office will not stipulate to vacate the final judgment. I mean, that crime was literally created just for Trump. It did not exist before the Trump. It is absolutely positively lawfare. They designed it. They had to torture federal and state law together, which never existed before. They did that, which is really, and most likely this is going to disappear on an appellate level, but they're going to have to go through the appeal. And meanwhile, there's this huge judgment overhead that's looming. And then let's not forget about Fani Willis in Georgia. Now, Fani is now dealing with a huge other issues. I mean, she was colluding with the Department of Justice in order to bring the case for election fraud against Donald Trump. So this has gone up to the Georgia appeals court, who has decided that she needs to be removed from the situation because this was a political witch hunt. God bless the Georgia Supreme Court. That's exactly what should have happened in this case. And so it looks like, because she was refusing, court orders to show documents. She was doing all sorts of things like that. These are prosecutors. These are people in the justice system that is supposed to be righteous, that are supposed to bring, and they instead created lawfare, the new term we have for misuse of the justice system. So the question is, how far does Donald Trump go in this? Does it become tit for tat? Is lawfare used against people who went after him? Or do you say, enough, this has to stop somewhere. Let it stop with me. I will do civil suits for defamation, but the rest of it, firing is enough. Let's just get Alvin Bragg out. Let's get Letitia James out. Fire Fani Willis. I mean, he can't fire anybody who's not federal, but the states can certainly take care of it and move on. I mean, which is the better approach there, Scott?
Well, I don't think they should move on. I think what happens, and that's why Donald Trump was elected, and that's why the people across the country have spoken. They've said that we have to get in and clean up the system. We have to get in and drain the swamp. And all his appointees, hopefully he'll get them all in, and that is the start to clean up this mess. And if prosecutors have broken the law, they'll have to go through the court system and be punished for it. And only when they're punished for it, only when there is justice for creating somebody who did something wrong and criminal, that people will say, I better pay attention to what I'm doing because I may be punished for this, for breaking the law. I mean, it's just it's just that simple.
I wish it were that simple, Scott. But here's another question for you. You mentioned the electorate, and they voted for cleanup, which I agree. They voted to clean up, and that's the wave that moved Donald Trump in. Now, but here's my question: did they respond? Do they need the cleanup because they recognize lawfare and the lawfare has to stop, and so they're not going to like it when either side, they just want an end to this? Is that what they voted for? An end to this weaponization of the courts and the justice system, an end to this persecuting your political opponent. Do they want an end to that, or do they want these people punished? Because there was no referendum on that when Donald Trump was elected. Basically, the man was elected to use his best judgment, and I trust that that's exactly what he's going to do. But I'm just positing the question: if you were Donald Trump, would you say, enough, none of these people, I'm not going to go after them except for the civil slander suits. Everybody else, just ignore them, just end them, let them go away. Now, the other side of the coin is, but if you do that, then they're just going to do it again to the next person that they can do it to, who doesn't have the stamina that Donald Trump has in withstanding all that they threw at him. I mean, he was remarkable. He and his family were remarkable in how they dealt with all of this. So do we walk away because it's been a bad precedent set by the Democrats to attack your opponent this way? Or do we try to teach a lesson and punish? But does that also teach the lesson that punishing is good, that you always need to punish? I don't know. It's a conundrum to me what the best way out of this is. I have faith that Donald Trump will find that, because I think no matter what you say about him, and I say a lot of positive things about him, he's a very fair man. He's extremely fair. And I think he'll find a solution. I'm just wondering in my own mind, what is the best solution? It's kind of like Solomon's choice to me. What do you think, Scott?
I don't think people should get away with breaking the law.
Yeah.
I mean, when you melt it all down, that's it. And if you break the law, I don't care if it's on a judicial way, lawyers, whatever. If you break the law, you should be held accountable. And it doesn't matter whether it's on a high level or a small level. If people see that they can get away with breaking the law, they're just going to continue to do it, and and it's a bad precedent, and it's going to teach people the wrong thing, right and wrong. It just, so no, I don't think they should.
With the prosecutors, I think the issue is, Scott, to be honest with you, it's more of ethical violations than anything else. And Fonnie Willis's case, it might actually be legal problems, but I think everybody else, it's an ethical issue. And so, that's not a criminal violation. And I think you have to look at each one to determine that, whether it was lawfare or not. And I think the test would be, if you remove these particular prosecutors, would this case still have been brought? And if the answer is no, then I think you have, a lawfare issue perhaps staring you in the face. But that's not criminal. Those are ethical issues, except for Fonnie Willis, who I think there's some fraud going on there. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate the call very much. Let's go to Heather in Rockland. Heather, good morning. Welcome to WRKO.
Hey, how are you?
I am fine. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to comment on Wardell's call, and I totally 100% disagree with him. I think Trump should go after all these people that defamed him, and here's why. Because I think he needs to show that it's not. I don't even think it has anything. I mean, it obviously has something to do with him, but he has to show that this is just not okay. And if he sets this precedent, and then the next person, they're not going to be able to do this. So don't think he's the only one that this is going to happen to if he doesn't set some sort of precedent. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. Yeah.
And excuse me.
But what do you say, Heather, to the precedent of going after your opponents? Because some people will perceive it as politically motivated to punish his political opponents. That's what I think the Democrats did in the past 4 years. They were punishing their political opponents. And Donald Trump responding, even though he is righteous, and they actually, in the case of, there were people who broke the law to go after him. Aren't you just continuing that cycle? And won't that always start to pop up then? Let's punish the political opponents. And isn't that how we become a banana republic?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly what I know that's what the stupid libs are going to think.
That's why I bring it up. How do you respond to that is basically the question.
First of all, I agree. I think the libs are going to, I know the libs are going to say that. I know that. But I really think, and it's kind of, what's that word? I'm trying to think. It's not kind of like, oh, well, I'm going to show you. It's you got to do what's right. First of all, these DAs, what's her name? Fannie Willis and the other guy, Alvin Bragg, and all those guys, they should lose their law license as far as I'm concerned.
I think Fannie Willis might actually, but
if he just goes to fire, have these people fired, that's not enough. I mean, whether he sues those DAs or whatever, that's one thing. Mm. But he can't just have them fired. They can go get another job. You know what I mean? It's not like they can't find another job and do the same thing. No, they have to lose their law license, or that he has to sue them financially too. But I don't think it's a tit for tat. I really don't, because I think this man has suffered so much. And I know people will say, well, this guy's billionaire and he has all the money, but that's not the point. Yeah. Why should he have to pay millions and millions and millions? I mean, I would love to know what his legal bill is. I mean, I can't imagine what his legal bill is. Do you know what I mean?
I think it would probably make us both cry if we saw it.
Probably funding a whole law firm's business. I mean, I work for a law firm, so I mean, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, millions of dollars. Why, even though he technically has the money, why should he has to pay that, like, just because he's rich. So you're telling me somebody who works hard, earns their money. Like, it's not like, and somebody will say, oh, well, his father gave him money when he was young and $1 million. Well, his father, invested in him, and he invested the money and made what he had, into an empire. It's not like his father just gave him money. I know that's going to be an argument too.
He had seed money.
Father gave him.
He had seed money from his father, just a little bit of money, and he turned that into what he has today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, look what he turned. But he built that. That is his. He built that, and that is he has a right to that. Just because he has money, it's like these people that think, oh well, look at Elon Musk. The same thing has happened to Elon Musk. Yeah, he's one of the richest guys in the world, but he earned that money. He built that money. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Just because he has that money doesn't mean that it's fair to go after all these people. I just don't think it's right, and I think that something has to be done, and I think Trump needs to set that precedent. It's not okay. It's not okay. I'm sorry. I mean, look at all the stuff that they put through. I mean, I'm in a sick way. I'm kind of glad because he's our president today, and I don't think if any of that didn't happen, he would be the president. So in a way, I'm kind of glad it happened. In a weird,
you're looking for the silver lining, and that's the silver lining that you found. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just I think Wardell's totally wrong. Oh, and I think it's so funny, these liberals. They're like, oh, now that Trump won, it's like, oh, well, let's everything be peace and peace and love, and let's just forget about everything. No. You guys put all this, angst and chaos. The last 4 years we suffered, us, Republicans, conservatives, I should say, because not every conservative is necessarily a Republican, but, the last 4 years have been like insane for us. And then now all of a sudden, I guess you can say we won. We did win.
Yeah.
But now we won, so we're supposed to just be like, okay, everything's fine and dandy now because we won, and now we can just forget about everything. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No. I'm
finding more and more people agree with you, Heather, and on the text line, and the people that I've, in the emails and so forth, and that agree with you, and that they're not looking for revenge. They're looking to stop bad behavior. They just want, and the only way to stop bad behavior, one texter, this is on text line 603, says there will be no change in behavior without consequences, and that's what I hear you saying. That's basically you're just looking, to not exact vengeance on somebody, which I think some people think when I say retribution, I mean exacting vengeance. I'm not. Retribution is not about vengeance. Retribution is about being in the right and correcting something and making it right again. That is retribution. And so that's my definition of retribution, in case anybody misunderstood it as vengeance. It isn't. That's something different. Thank you so much for the call, Heather. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, these particular DAs and law enforcement people who have gone above and beyond. At least Jack Smith resigned in the DOJ. He knew that the writing was on the wall. But, you see Donald Trump bringing these civil suits against the defamers in the media, but he hasn't done anything regarding the DAs who haven't broken the law, or the prosecutor. They haven't broken the law, but I think there's some ethical violations there. And to be honest with you, I think as public law enforcement officials, they should have been held to a higher standard than the media. And so maybe some firings in order. I don't know. We can talk about it on the other side. 617-266-6868. This is the Kuhner Report. Do you think when they recorded this carol back in, I don't know, the 40s, that they knew it would be being played again, basically almost 100 years later? It's just, you hear that, I don't know, was that 30s even? I have no idea. Mike is on a Christmas carol, tantrum this morning. So stay tuned. who knows what's going to come back in any of these particular breaks. 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868 is the number here. This is Sandy Shack, sitting in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. The text number, 70470. On the text line, 617 says, the Trump effect has smoked out these bad actors and defamers. I think we should punish them all lawfully. Go get them. Well, I think the key word there is lawfully, don't you? As long as it's done lawfully. 508 says, Sandy, the moonbats and the media are afraid Trump will do to them what they did to him. Well, I think that's exactly right. I completely agree with that. It's so funny that you say that, because when the Democrats started going on about how if Trump wins, we're going to be arrested, we're going to put us into camps, they're going to, it's just that we won't be able to get jobs, I thought, what the hell are they talking about? That's just bizarre. And then I remembered, when Biden won, remember the lib talking heads, that people who had supported Trump Republicans, the GOP, that, they needed to be fired and we need to make sure they never work again. That was actually one talking head I remember on CNN. We need to make sure that we need to stomp them out. We need to take them out completely. And Hillary Clinton thought we needed to be in re-education camps. So that's what so now they were projecting at the end of that election what they wanted to do to us on us, where it's ridiculous. Should there be some, nobody wants to put anybody in camps. Nobody's looking for re-education. Nobody's looking to establish a fascist state. But the question is, should there be some kind of penance paid by those who didn't just disagree with Trump? No, I'm not talking about people who didn't vote for him, don't disagree with him, don't like him. No problem with any of that. But those who broke the law to go after him in the past few years, those who did unethical, immoral, lied, slandered, defamed, paid no attention to the truth, and physically tried to hurt him as well. Should there be some kind of punishment legally, lawfully, that can be exacted against them, not this wholesale fascist response that the Democrats wanted to do to the Republicans when President Biden won? That is my question that I put out there. And our first caller of the day, Wardell's like, no, everybody just move on. Okay, well, you can forgive and move on, or you can exact some kind of retribution from those people that you lawfully can, who were particularly damaging and who were lawbreakers or unethical or when they went after Donald Trump. Is that better? And then we can move on, because moving on can either be you forgive and forget, or you feel a sense of justice and that something has been made whole, and then you move on. Which is it that you think we need to do here? I guess that's one of the big questions. Mark from Pembroke, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Mark?
Pretty good, Sandy. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you.
To you, too.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I personally voted for retribution.
Okay.
And everyone I know voted for Trump for retribution. And in my opinion, retribution is necessary. There's been a lot of talk about slander. And to me, slander it's only the tip of the iceberg, okay? There was a broad conspiracy to commit a coup in this country. And it's probably the worst thing that's ever happened in the United States. And the conspirators, they all conspired to undermine and sabotage Trump's first administration. They stole the 2020 election, in my opinion, and they may have actually ginned up a pandemic to do this. And that's a crime against humanity if that's true. And, they politically persecuted this guy over the last 4 years, to prevent him from running again and to undermine the last election. And, these are things that are unforgivable. And the perpetrators have got to be brought to justice, and they have to be punished. And justice demands it for a number of reasons, not the least of which is you want to make sure that this never happens again. The folks that did these things, they can't be allowed to get away with it.
Well, I don't disagree that there are some people that need to have some kind of reckoning. And I think, ABC has started that process in the media, and Georgia has started that process with Fani Willis. So we've seen it start. But the question is, I guess, Mark, how far does it go? Where do you stop?
It needs to go as far as it needs to go.
Well, but that's not say, no offense, Sunshine, but that's not saying anything. It needs to go as far as it goes. How far does it need to go is the question.
Again, everyone who is involved in this coup needs to be brought to justice. So as far as it goes, in order to meet that objective, that's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
How far do you punish people who undermine democracy, who stole an election, who committed acts of political persecution?
Well, I think the key though to all of this, Mark, is that whatever you do, if you think that some kind of consequences need to be meted out, is you have to do it lawfully. And there's standards that have to be met if you do that. There's burdens of proof. There's all sorts of pesky things like that that protect us all. Those rights protect us all. And just because you think somebody threatened democracy doesn't mean they lose their rights in the process. Otherwise, you're guilty of threatening democracy if you do that. So you have to do this on a legal level. And in some cases, these people who I know you believe would be egregious, have done egregious things, aren't going to meet you can't punish them because you're not going to meet a burden of proof. So I think you have to decide at what point you're going to walk away from it. We'll be right back. Thank you for the call. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack. This is the Kuhner Report. Rocking around the Christmas. Mike, do you have White Christmas? Because that apparently is the number one Christmas carol of all time. There's that, which I prefer to Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. There's also, my mother used to play Eartha Kitt, Santa Baby, apparently, according to my grandfather, over and over and over again until he was ready to jump out the window. I did not know until my mother passed away that was, in fact, one of her, favorite Christmas carols. It's not on my top 10, but, for Mom, maybe. 617-266-6868 is the number here. I'm Sandy Shack, filling in for Jeff Kuhner. The text number is 70470. On the text line, 617 says, Sandy, I'm all for accountability. However, most of the liberals I know don't understand the legal wrangling the Dems created to get Trump. So I say expose, prosecute, and punish. Okay. 978 says, forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. That is so true. You can forgive and still met out consequences, like your parents do when you're a kid. Yes, honey, I forgive you. I know you're sorry. I forgive you, but you still need to stand in the corner so that you learn not to do it again. So I completely understand what you're talking about, and I think that's accurate. And maybe a combination of what those two texts are suggesting is the appropriate approach, which is you do need to expose. And where it's a breaking of the law and you can lawfully do it, prosecute. I think that's not inappropriate, to be honest with you. Then you can forgive and move on, but you have meted out consequences for bad actions. I think that's not an unreasonable approach to all of this. What do you think? Do you think that Donald Trump should turn the other cheek and move on, or should he do what the texter is suggesting, expose, prosecute, and punish? Sal in Wakefield, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Sal?
I'm good. Good morning, Sandy. My opinion is that these people have to be held accountable because going forward, they'll just do it again. This is no longer the Democrat Party. They're behaving like communists. For the last, since Trump's first administration, there's so many examples. The Russian collusion hoax, we know. It's actually, there's evidence now that it was an actual made up hoax.
Yeah.
Nobody paid the price for that. Nobody has paid the price for that. And there's actual evidence. There's so many examples. Steve Bannon just did jail time for contempt of Congress. Mm-hmm. Eric Holder was found in contempt of Congress. Obama's wingman. Nothing happened to him. No. Okay, and here's another thing, Sandy, people probably might not know about. General Milley, during Trump's first administration, was in contact with a Chinese general, and said, I will warn you if this president takes any military action against you, China. Now,
yeah, he actually wrote that in his book. General Milley did write that in his book. It told everybody that he had done that. Yeah.
Imagine if it came out that a general did that against Obama or Biden. They'd be in jail. They'd be court-martialed and sent to prison. It's almost on the lines or level of treason. So these people. It's no longer our parents' Democrat Party, I guess is my point. These people they're Marxists. They're
no,
using
it is not the Democrat Party. I was a Democrat for many years, and then I'm just like, with my parents, that was brought up in a Democrat household, and then as I got older and began to realize this was not the party that my parents were part of, this is completely different, I left. I'm like, yeah, no, this is not for me, and I walked away from it, and since then, I've seen the evolution and the downward slide even more so, to the point where I agree with you. It's the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has taken it over. And I personally think, Sal, that they have brought the Democratic Party to its ruin. I think this last election has ruined the Democratic Party. They need a complete rebuild. And those who recognize it will be part of a party in the future that might do them credit, but if they don't recognize where the problems are, then, they're going to go the way of the Whigs. There aren't any. So I think that's their future. And I think this is their threshold now to decide what to do about it. It all depends on what their response to or a lot of it will depend on what their response to Donald Trump is. If you dig in and help with the rest of America who wanted him in there and for the rebuild, then good. I think you've got a future. If you continue the bad acting, the walking on the cliff edge of morality and ethics, and periodically stepping over to do something illegal, then no, I don't think you have a future. So you think the only way you need to force them into it by prosecuting people who broke the law in regard to their persecution of Donald Trump, Sal?
Absolutely. That's, I think, the only way we could get any change. And if you think about it, Sandy, Donald Trump has got to be the most investigated human being in my lifetime, if not the world. And think about it this way. If he actually had committed any crimes going all the way back to his first administration, do you think they would have actually allowed him to make 3 conservative justices picks for the court?
He wouldn't have made the first election. If they'd been able to expose criminal, he wouldn't have won in 2016. So that would never have occurred. So yeah, no, if he actually had broken the law, he would have been, he never would have survived in 2016. So yeah, no, there's nothing there. And for that point, Sal, in New York, Letitia James had to create a crime. They had to put together crimes that weren't crimes, and Mac pushed them together and then prosecute him under something that actually didn't exist and that nobody had ever been prosecuted under before, because it didn't exist until Donald Trump. And so that's an exact example of what you're talking about.
I mean, how about the phone call they impeached him on? Turns out, and we know this, was it Biden in front of the Foreign Relations said that he had a prosecutor fired, he was holding back money?
He wasn't in front of Foreign Relations. He was vice president. He was actually at a forum. He admits that he went to Ukraine and he was actually joking. Not joking as in, haha, this is not true. He was laughing and thinking this was funny to show everybody how powerful he was, getting this Ukraine prosecutor who was prosecuting Burisma, his son's company, and that he got him fired by holding up American funds until they fired the prosecutor. Yes, he admitted it, thinking it was really funny and showed how powerful he was. He thought he's sitting up there with his legs crossed, laughing and smiling and joking with a big Cheshire cat grin. And, I think that's one of the reasons, people first started to realize that the wheels were going to come off the bus. And they did. They did in short order. Did you see, Sal, speaking of President Biden, did you see the report that just came out? It's in the Daily Mail that says President Biden had severe cognitive issues from day one of his presidency, and that in fact it was his staff that basically ran the country for the past 4 years. No wonder it's in such bad shape, huh?
Well, we all saw that. I mean, if you remember his, whatever you want to call them, interviews when he was in his basement back during COVID,
Yes.
you could tell back then that he was having major issues, but people still voted.
Yeah.
And please,
Because they bought the lie. They bought the lie that everything was fine. And, that they bought the lie. They believed, they not only believed, they wanted to believe. And so therefore the emperor had no clothes. And they didn't want to see that. So that's what happened with him. Thank you so much for the call, Sal. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Sue in Maine. Sue, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Thank you for taking my call. I'm great. How are you?
So far, so good. Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you. And you have a big fan base up here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I do want to agree with the people that have been saying, yes, we need to hold their feet to the fire because this kind of behavior will not stop until they start to understand there will be consequences for their actions. And, I mean, like the big stuff. I mean, look at Tucker Carlson. He got fired for telling the truth.
Yeah, he did.
And George Stephanopoulos still has a job, right?
Yep, he does.
Yeah.
They've re-upped his contract, but they cut his pay.
Did they?
Yeah.
Gee. What, from $35 million to $25 million?
Yeah, like they did with Rachel Maddow went from 25 to 20, I think. Yeah. And I think there are a couple of others over there that have been told, like, Jen, Psaki, and I'm trying to remember the other one over there that have been told they can come back, but at a greatly reduced pay. So I think MSNBC is hanging on by its fingernails. So
starting to understand this because look at the groveling that Joe and Mika went through right after Trump was elected. They went down to Mar-a-Lago and just, basically, with their little heads bowed. And, so slowly but surely, as long as we can get... Now, I have some very intelligent liberal friends, but they just believe in the crap that they've been told. Mm-hmm. And, but if we constantly just keep putting out there the actual truth, I believe that a lot of these people who don't like Trump but voted for him or just wouldn't vote for Trump anyway will start to understand the way they've been fooled. Because I was a Democrat too until somebody turned to me one time and told me to grow a brain, and I was terrified, and I had no idea what she was talking about. This was a complete stranger in a restaurant at a table next to me, and it's just one of those things. And I kept hearing in the news all kinds of great things about Democrats and bad things about Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And you know what a friend of mine once told me is that a Republican is a Democrat who's been mugged. And I think it's probably true. I would say a Republican is a Democrat who started to pay taxes. We'll be right back. 617-266-6868. This is the Kuhner Report. That's the number one Christmas carol ever. Isn't that interesting? It was done, 70 years ago? And there it is. Like they used to say on TV, you can't dance to it. But, it's a good slow dance you could do to it. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. 617-266-6868. 617-266-6868 is the number here. This is Sandy Shack filling in for Jeff Kuhner. And retribution is the topic under discussion. Specifically, should President Trump forgive those who prosecuted him with consequences for their activities, or should he just forgive them and move on? Ignoring their bad acts. On the text line, which is 70470, number one says, 508 says, look how they're indicting and prosecuting Eric Adams just for going up against Biden on illegal immigration and for treating Trump as a normal incoming president, not as Hitler. Well, yeah. So that is the argument for prosecuting and for holding people accountable on a legal level for what they have done. And no matter what response you have to the people who went after Trump, it has to be legal. You cannot do extra legal or, I think, social punishments. I think that is falling into the same trap the progressives did. That's what they wanted to do to Republicans, and you cannot do. I don't believe. That's my opinion. But I think legal redress is something completely different. Let's talk to Mark in Milton. Mark, welcome to WRKO. How are you, sir?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to everybody out there.
Thank you so much.
My only comment, short and sweet, I think we are misusing the language.
Okay.
We cannot mistake justice for retribution.
Okay.
I don't think this is retribution at all.
You think it's justice?
I think it is 100% justice.
Okay.
And that's my only comment.
Well, explain why.
Well, as virtually every caller has said, if somebody does something wrong, they need to be held accountable. Is that retribution or is it justice?
Well,
to me, retribution is like, I don't think Donald Trump can really go after Smokey Daniels. Was that her name?
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
I don't think he can really go after her at this point. And if he did, that would be retribution. What he has said in the past, like about Rosie O'Donnell, that kind of stuff is retribution. I think we've moved past that. But if people lied to get the FISA warrants, they need to be held accountable and brought to justice. That is not retribution. That is justice. I think retribution is more personal without strong, and you've said it, 10 times, at least, that you need to have a legal foundation for doing what we're doing. To me, that's not retribution. That's justice. And I think we should get rid of this term retribution because we know the other side is going to hijack that word.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, retribution actually means punishment inflicted on somebody for a wrong or criminal act. That's what retribution actually is. And it doesn't denote that you're doing something wrong, and it doesn't denote that it denotes that you're in the right. Retribution does. But I think you're absolutely right that it will be hijacked. As they hijack things that are completely innocent. For instance, I'll give you an example, Mark, that completely supports your point. When Donald Trump, remember on the campaign trail, was talking about the economic effect of Mexico's building these giant car factories on the other side of the border, and he said it's going to create basically a bloodbath, and he was talking about an economic bloodbath. And they took that word, and they tried to make it seem as if he was calling for violence against Democrats or against Biden supporters after the election. They completely hijacked the term, twisted it, and put it out there as some kind of call to violence. So that supports actually what you just said, don't you think?
Yeah, and I mean, think of all of the terms that the left and progressives have hijacked over the years. Let's take it back to Christmas carols. What's that song? The one about she's staying late at night.
Oh, baby, it's cold outside.
Yeah, they take everything and they just twist it into a version that always supports a. I'm going to say
they turn it around to meaning date rape. And it's like it was written by a husband and wife team, and it was supposed to be a cute, sweet song about seduction, not about rape. And that's what they turned it into, which I always thought was horrible because it's a sweet song. I thought it was a very nice song, but that's me, Mark. But I completely understand your meaning, and that they take something innocent and turn it into something nefarious, basically.
And that's why I don't like using that term retribution. I want it to be said as justice because justice does need to be done. I think justice needs to be found not just for the 13 Americans that died in Afghanistan. Weren't there over 100 innocent Afghanis that died in that bomb blast?
Yeah.
Didn't Biden target a family about a week later that was completely innocent and killed the family in a targeted drone strike?
Yeah. Children too. There were children in that car. Yeah.
And justice justice is crying out, in my opinion.
The only problem I have with that, Mark, and I do agree with you that their justice is crying out. You got to be careful with the word, I suppose with both words, either retribution or justice, because people take justice into their own hands, and they will mete out punishments in the name of justice that they have no business doing. And that's something that I find intolerable. I don't believe in vigilantism. I don't believe in, I believe in using the system. So for me, retribution meant using the system. And as it's supposed to be used. Justice can be anything. Justice can be somebody going up and what that whack job killer did in killing the United Healthcare guy. He thought that was justice for bad health insurance policies. That to me is no. That's psychotic. Whereas retribution means you're working within the system. Retribution actually means using the law, bringing punishment within the law. And that's why I use that word, because I think whatever has to be done or whatever should be done to create a fair playing field moving forward and an environment in which Donald Trump can promote his platform that he won on, I think that needs to be done through legal means and not through vigilantism. That's why I picked that word, but you may disagree with me.
I think you've given a very good explanation. I'm just concerned that, can I make one last comment about that whack job?
Go right ahead.
I thought Obamacare fixed all the problems in the health care. And does that whack job does he not realize that everything has been delayed? We all know health insurance needs an overhaul. And Obamacare was not the answer, and they won't come out and, once again, admit it. Government is rarely the answer to problems.
Mm. What is it, those feared words, I'm from the government and I'm here to help?
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's it. So,
yeah.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all of whatever traditions I'm missing out on. But have a great season.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. I know everybody in the audience does too, and I hope you have a happy holiday too, and a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah, and whatever it is that you like to do this time of year. Thank you for your call. 617-266-6868 is the number here. 617-266-6868. When you hear a caller drop off, it means a line has opened up for you. Mike, I think it's that time of the week, is it not? So every week we play Kuhner's Call Log. It's our favorite caller of the week. This week, and this, by the way, is Michael's thing to do. It's Mike's. Mike picks the call every week. Mike produces what you hear every week. Mike does the editing, picks the sounder at the end, does everything. And so it is completely Mike's creation. And this week, because starting Monday, both Jeff and I are gone, and Mike is gone for a good time of we're all taking vacation at the same time. This is our last Kuhner's Call Log for the year. And so this Kuhner's Call Log is not the best caller of the week, it's the best caller of the year. And this is Mike's entry in that category. Go ahead, Mike.
It's time for Kuhner's Call Log, where we showcase our favorite caller from the week.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I love you, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, I love you in a non-sexual way. I love you.
No, that's only in a non-sexual way. I'm feeling great, and I feel that we're going to have hopefully a really unifying win. And if you look at the whole world, it's falling apart. The world is blowing up. We could end up in World War III. Right now, our country is just being decimated by millions of people coming in, pouring in. And now we have the worst border, I believe, in the history of the world. I don't think there's ever been anything like this. You can't win elections with open borders, high taxes, high interest rates, all the things. They cheat. They have to cheat because their policies are so bad. And we have the best security, the best attorneys. We're going to stop it. It used to be that I will start wars. But, oh, he's a warmonger. Look at him. Look at the way he speaks. He's going to start wars. I'm the only one that didn't start a war. But now their line is that I'm a fascist, I'm a dictator. But they are the greatest misinformation and disinformation people ever that ever lived. MAGA is the greatest thing. It's the greatest movement in history. I will tell you that, Jeff. You understand that. I mean, you understand it better than anybody. You're
total pro, and I really appreciate it because you are a total pro.
That was a very appropriate call for this morning, given our topic, Mike. And I think a very appropriate call for the year, given the year's events when President Trump was on with Jeff. I think that was a very good choice. It was a fun call. It was a very fun interview, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. And we thank President Trump, too, for coming on the show. We appreciate that as well. I want to do just 2 seconds for an aside. I'm getting criticized on the text line for not talking about the continuing resolution this morning. I just want to say, first of all, we talked about it for 4 hours yesterday. And then yesterday afternoon, President Trump got his debt ceiling wish, and they changed that in the CR, but it still didn't pass last night because there was still stuff that bothered some of the Republicans. And just to keep you up to date, the House is going to vote this morning at 10 a.m. on a temporary fix for the CR. So it looks like they have some kind of deal afoot that will keep the lights on before the deadline tonight at midnight. But I saw no reason to talk about it again when there hadn't been when the vote last night failed and we were still in the same position that we were yesterday when we did it for 4 hours. So I wanted to do this instead. I hope that you agree. The number here is 617-266-6868. We're talking about justice, retribution, vengeance. I don't know what you want to call it, but should President Trump forgive the people who persecuted him for the past 4 years, or forgive and forget, move on without consequences, or should he, in fact, met out some consequences to those people who went after him, and not just people who disagreed with him? We're not talking about that. I am talking about people who lied about him, who slandered him, who actually committed crimes in their zeal to keep him from being elected, because that happened. It happened on more than one occasion. We've seen the civil lawsuits now against media outlets for slander. ABC just settled a big one. Another one's been brought against Gannett. I don't know if there's more coming, but those are the two that are currently out there. And then we've seen some responses. Jack Smith resigned from the Department of Justice, ended his investigations. Fani Willis has been withdrawn from the Georgia case. She's fighting that, but she has been, and she's got fraud issues that have been brought up against her as well. And that leaves Letitia James and Alvin Bragg in New York to be dealt with on whatever level. I'm not saying what they did was illegal, but it was certainly unethical on the part of Letitia James. So I'm thinking there must be some consequences, like removal from office. I don't know. But my question is to you, is that appropriate? Or should the president just move on? Let's go to Morris in Boston. Morris, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Morris?
Hey, good morning, Sandy. Happy holidays.
To you too.
Yeah, thank you. So, I forget what the fellow's name was that called in earlier, but he was talking about, we shouldn't have retribution, this and that. And, in my mind, okay, Donald Trump, President Trump has his battles to fight with these people. But the way I see it is, from 2016 to 2020, we were cheated out of getting everything we could have gotten out of Donald Trump. As I saw in an interview with him, he had said, I spend 12 hours a day doing my job as president. And then at night, I spend another 12 hours fighting these ridiculous lies, fake scandals like Russia collusion. And for 4 years straight, all we saw in the news was Russia, Russia, Russia. The doors are closing in. Any day now, he's going to jail. Then we had 2 fake impeachments. And then we had the Hunter Biden laptop lie that, in turn, affected that election. And we were stuck with a schlep for 4 years. That affected all of us. We had the COVID lies. We had the vaccine lies. We had the lockdowns. We had the masks. We had the social distancing. With what I do for a living, that absolutely destroyed my industry. Trying to pack, 150 guys on a construction site and keep them 6 feet apart from each other and constantly sanitizing their hands. It was mayhem.
Yeah.
And it cost us tons of money. It cost a lot of people money. So it's not just about Donald Trump getting revenge. And I'm using the word revenge. I want to see these people locked up. I want to see the media, the way the left would go after people on the right, whether it was a Supreme Court justice or whoever it be, they'd get outside their houses and they'd make their lives hell and go after them, really based on lies. But we have truth and facts on our side. And honestly, part of me wants to take a leave of absence and go torture some of these people in the media and just follow them around and just harass them and make them pay. These people, they destroyed lives. There are people that I know that are still looking for a job because they were vocal about saying they voted for Donald Trump in 2020. And he was a pariah in 2020. Myself and very few others were ones that were willing to admit openly that January 6th was a sham and that we voted for Donald Trump. And I tell you, I lost a lot of friends, family members that, kind of stopped talking and
it happened in my husband's family too. And I'm like, yeah, okay, here's the rule. No disgusting politics on social media by any of you. Yeah. And I refuse to allow it in my home on holidays. No. I stop any conversation. Just why? Because it was an unreasonable response, an unreasonable response. It was bizarre. Frothing at the mouth. And it was like, what the hell? Is there something, somebody take a pill before they come in here? But it's, I agree with you. I was appalled by it too. But here's the thing. You were appalled by the actions themselves. It was not just that it was a lie that they were promoting. It was their aggressive behavior. I do think that if you condone that kind of aggressive behavior by repeating it, you are just as bad as they are. And you may have truth on your side, but it's just as bad. I understand the emotional response to want to show them what they did to people by doing it to them. But I think that's just a snowball to hell, basically, is what's going to happen. I think what you do is you make behavior like that illegal. I mean, not the words, but you can't follow somebody around and yell at them. You can't, you make it, maybe you add, politics as a suspect class, for hiring people, if you can show because people do in lawsuits all the time when they show that they haven't been hired because they're too old or they're of a different race or a different, sexual persuasion or any of the above. And maybe you add, political to that, which sounds bizarre, but maybe that's what this past 4 years has brought us to. I think you need to do something on the legal scope to protect people moving forward, but I don't think you repeat the bad behavior. Do you, Morris?
No, and I don't mean to repeat the bad behavior. I mean the bad behavior needs to be dealt with. Like, take the workplace.
But how do you do that? How do you do that retroactively? I think you make it a problem going forward, but there's not much I think you can do going backwards.
So, I do think, you have to make examples, in the workplace. If somebody does something unethical and they are, brought up in front of whether it's HR, whoever it may be, and they lose their job, that reverberates through the company.
Sure.
And people see that and they say, oh, okay, I'm not doing that. Like with what I do for a living, we have certain rules. You don't use contractors who are doing work for you. You don't take kickbacks. There are a lot of things that you don't do that, and they're clearly written in company policy and this and that. But obviously that stuff wasn't there at some point, and it was written in those...
In response to something.
In response to something. So they have to be held accountable. I mean, we are held... it's no different than one... I love the police. I'm a big fan. However, there are certain above-the-law mentalities that bother me. If you are paid to enforce the law, you need to be held to a higher standard of the law. It shouldn't be, hey, you get caught doing 100 on the highway, oh, your buddy pulls you over, hey, all right, you're free to go, or whatever it may be, kind of like what we saw with the Karen Reed case. Mm-hmm. That is the type of abuse of power that we have to get rid of.
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci, that man needs to go to jail. He has destroyed people's lives.
Well, I think there's actually legal actions that can be brought against Dr. Fauci. And as I said before, that's my whole thing is, okay, I'm all for consequences, but it has to be done legally. It can't be done, socially, like you were talking about. You had friends who didn't get jobs because of their political views. Okay, that's, how do you control that? It's just like, it's you can, but it's very, very difficult. Dr. Fauci actually broke some laws, I believe, in sending money to Wuhan for research. That sounds like the original version with Eartha Kitt. I think Madonna did a cover of this. But my mother loved that. to the point of distraction for the rest of her family. So thank you, Mike, for playing that for my mom. I'm sure she's smiling wherever she is. Up in heaven. 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. On the text line 70470-978 says, if my wife cheats on me, I can forgive her, but that doesn't mean we don't divorce. Forgiveness, but consequences. Yeah, I have heard that from a number of people, that Donald Trump should in fact forgive, but there need to be consequences, whether you call it justice, retribution, whatever you want to call it. Should Donald Trump seek to impose consequences on those who went beyond the pale to destroy him during his election and for the past 4 years, really? You know, those who slandered and lied and so in some cases broke the law. Should those people face consequences now, or do we just wipe it into a clean slate and move forward? Let's talk with Charlie in Westboro. Charlie, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Hey, Sandy. Merry Christmas.
To you too, Charlie.
What I wanted to say, you know, quite a while back, I was talking to you guys, and the subject was, it was one of the Trump impeachments. And I remember saying, you know, we can't have one party get in and impeach and the other party get in and impeach back. We as people, we have our lives. We don't want to be dealing with that crap all the time. And we just want to wake up in the morning and go about our days and enjoy life. But with this, it's not revenge. It boils down to human nature. If a 5-year-old will argue to the death just to get another cookie, and these, yeah, one of my granddaughter's teachers actually said to my daughter, 5-year-olds are natural liars because they don't know any better yet. They haven't been taught everything yet. And
they'll say whatever it takes. Yep.
Exactly. But these politicians and all these people, I always say to my wife, these people are not doing this for nothing. Rachel Maddow or whoever doesn't get on TV and lie through their teeth to everybody in the country for free. Somehow they're getting paid for it. And so the cookie just got a lot bigger in a situation like this. So human nature says, if they're not punished, they're just going to keep doing it. And there needs to be an example made. And I believe, even if you don't get the low-hanging fruit, you know, people who haven't done too much but are definitely implicit in this whole thing, get some of the bigger people and send the message that you can't do this anymore. I think it really needs to be, the law just needs to be enforced. It's not like we're asking for something crazy.
Well, I completely agree with enforcing the law. As an attorney, I'm very much, you know, support the court system, the justice system. So I think without a doubt, if the law's on the books and they've broken it, you need to prosecute. But here's the thing. I don't want to see selective prosecution, which is, I think, some of the things that happened in the last election. People were selectively prosecuted. I think if you're going to prosecute, you got to do it across the board. And so it doesn't matter, you know, on which side of the fence you're on. Everybody needs to be held accountable. I think that's the only way to do that moving forward without creating really bad precedent. Don't you think, Charlie?
Oh, and that is a problem with my theory. But if prosecuting everybody is what it takes, it's better than prosecuting nobody, because you had a previous caller there, Wardell, I think his name was. He said he was kind of getting on you about, you know, revenge and all this stuff, but then he said we need to fix the country. Well, this is one of the biggest problems that made the country what it is we're trying to fix. Because with this, and also, you know, then, and it goes to the media too. The media helps support these people, and cover them up so that they can continue to do what they do. So if you're going to go after. It's a complicated problem, but at the same time, it absolutely has to be addressed.
No, but I think you're right. I think there do need to be consequences, but it has to be uniform. It has to be for everybody. And you just brought up the media, which just made me think I was talking about selective prosecution. You know, they do selective broadcasting. They only pick the news that they want to put out, and then they put their own spin on it. So a lot of people didn't even know that there was another side, just like what happened with the New York Post and the whole Hunter Biden laptop. You know, they got X'd off of X and Twitter because they were telling the truth. I think there needs to be consequences for that as well. We'll be right back. Thank you for the call, Charlie. 617-266-6868. This is the Kuhner Report. 617-266-6868. Welcome to Michael Jones' Christmas Carol show, because we've been treated to Mike's choices for Christmas carols this morning. I'm not sure. He's played my favorite. He's played his favorite. You can always ask him for your favorite. He might be able to do it in the time we have left. 617-266-6868 is the number here. The text number is 70470. We've been talking about, should Donald Trump basically make those people who have persecuted him face legal consequences for those who broke the law, lied, slandered, etc., in regard to their zeal in keeping him out of the White House, which of course didn't work for them. But should they face the consequences for bad acts now that he's coming into power? And we talked about the media, we talked about bad prosecutors, but we haven't talked about the J6 committee, and what they did, and specifically what one member did, Liz Cheney. The J6 committee was anything but a normal congressional investigative committee, or put on nowhere near a normal investigative hearing. First of all, they hired a TV producer and televised their hearing in prime time. Secondly, they manipulated the evidence to show only what they wanted. They deep-sixed other evidence. Apparently, they've destroyed evidence. And, for instance, one of the things that just came out this week was that the FBI was undercover at the Capitol on January 6th amongst the Trump supporters. And the committee with the FBI said they weren't. In fact, they completely hid that fact, and that's come out now in a new report. They've also revealed a series of what I would say are dubious practices that they took part in during the hearing, and I'm specifically referring to Liz Cheney and the fact that she was in contact with one of the witnesses. And that would be, I'm just looking at the report now as I'm talking to you. It was a report from the Committee on House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight. The chairman is Barry Loudermilk. He's from Georgia. And his report that was released on Tuesday reveals that there wasn't just one single cause for what happened, but there were multiple causes and multiple failures that happened. But he outlined criminal recommendations against co-chair Liz Cheney for witness tampering based on her communication with star witness Cassidy Hutchinson. Now, do you remember who Cassidy was? Cassidy Hutchinson was essentially the woman who got up and testified that Donald Trump grabbed the steering wheel in the car. She said that it was more than just that. It was that Donald Trump was refusing to go down to stop people from rioting. I mean, she gave a lot of very dangerous testimony that was not backed up, one, by anybody else. She was the only one testifying to any of this, and it was really the crux of their whole case. And I want to play for you some of her testimony. This is her relaying a secondhand account. She says a Secret Service agent, because she wasn't in the car with Trump, told her that this happened. Cut 19A, please, Mike.
Tony proceeded to tell me that When the president got in the Beast, he was under the impression from Mr. Meadows that the off-the-record movement to the Capitol was still possible and likely to happen, but that Bobby had more information. So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing, the president had very strong, a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing."
But she wasn't through with that. Cut 19B.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Okay, first of all, none of that could physically happen because there is a divider between the back seat and the driver in the front. And Donald Trump wasn't sitting in the front seat. The president's not allowed to sit in the front seat. So it was on its face ridiculous. But then it comes out, according to Loudermilk, that Liz Cheney colluded with Cassidy Hutchinson without Hutchinson's attorney knowing about it. And the Select Committee had knowledge that Hutchinson's claims were false when they publicly promoted her. Basically, the report says that President Trump did not attack his Secret Service detail at any time. He did not have intelligence indicating violence on the morning of January 6th, and that Hutchinson falsely claimed to have drafted a handwritten note for President Trump on January 6th, and that Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson basically attempted to disbar Hutchinson's former attorney. So this is all pretty scary stuff, actually. And what the report says is that Cheney used the January 6th committee as a tool to attack President Trump at the cost of investigative integrity and Capitol security. That's it in a nutshell. There's more, there's more to charges, but that's the crux of it. Now, Cheney has responded by saying Chairman Loudermilk's interim report disregards the truth and the Select Committee's tremendous weight of evidence and instead fabricates lies and defamatory allegations in an attempt to cover up what Donald Trump did. Their allegations did not reflect a review of the actual evidence and are a malicious and cowardly assault on the truth. No reputable lawyer, legislator, or judge would take this seriously. So that's her response to it. So you decide who you believe. Do you believe the report, or do you believe, at the time, Congresswoman Cheney? This is, what Loudermilk's suggesting is a criminal investigation, because if she indeed did tamper with a witness, what that means is that she knew she was represented by counsel and approached her without going through her lawyer. She had direct communication with the witness without the attorney's knowledge, and that's absolutely codified as unethical. And did it both directly and through an intermediary who is Alyssa Farah Griffin. She's on The View. There's a shocker. She's an attorney on The View. So there are two attorneys involved in this that should have known better. And they did a lot of the subcommittee conducted, I think it's like 6 transcribed interviews of Hutchinson in total. And Hutchinson, for the first 3 interviews, was represented by attorney. In the last 3, they cut the attorney out. So Liz Cheney did something she shouldn't have done. She knows she shouldn't have done it. The report says this rises to the criminal level. Liz Cheney says this is made up. I never did any such thing. So you have to decide which of these things is true. Is Liz Cheney culpable for manipulating a witness and feeding the January 6th committee fake evidence? Or is she right? Is she being now held up to be the scapegoat for the failed January 6th report, which was supposed to take Donald Trump out of play for the election, in which it didn't. And that's just one of the issues, that was probably the biggest one, but one of the issues that's on regard to the January 6th committee. There's others, the fact that they didn't call Speaker Pelosi at all, even though the speaker is in charge of security for Capitol Hill. And we find out just this past year that because her daughter was filming her on the day in a documentary, that she acknowledges that she had a responsibility for security and failed. And in fact, I have that cut. Let's play that. Cut number 50, if you please, Mike.
The fact is that the President of the United States, the former president, and his toadies do not want to face the facts. They're trying to do revisionist history on January 6th. But we cannot let us be dragged into their, again, false impression of what happened that day. They know what happened that day.
Okay, that was not the cut I was thinking of. We will find that cut and play it on the other side. But this is what the January 6th committee was doing. Now, were they doing this? Are they protected by being congressmen? I think they are to a certain extent. But if a congressman breaks the law, like Liz Cheney does or did, or what's claimed, if she did what is claimed that she did here, should she be criminally prosecuted? Should this happen going forward to stop other people from doing the same thing? 617-266-6868 is the number here. This is the Kuhner Report. 617-266-6868, 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack in for Jeff Kuhner. We're talking about retribution or imposing legal consequences on bad actors who broke the law in pursuit of destroying Donald Trump for the past 4 years. The J6 committee members are under review at the moment for, at least one of them, Liz Cheney, is under review for unethical behavior for talking directly to Cassidy Hutchinson without her lawyer. And Cassidy Hutchinson, by the way, at this point has been proven to have given false testimony. According to a recent report just released by the House Oversight Committee. But Liz Cheney is not the only problem. The committee, as a group, did some suspicious things. For instance, they never called Nancy Pelosi, which just shows me what a political witch hunt this was. Because the Speaker of the House, and I mentioned this before the break, the Speaker of the House is responsible for the security on Capitol Hill, and Donald Trump has put out there on more than one occasion that he offered Nancy Pelosi and as well as the D.C. mayor, National Guard. He called for a National Guard, and she said no. Nancy Pelosi said no, and the Mayor Bowser of D.C. said no too. And then they always said, no, we didn't do it. No. He never offered. No, it's not our fault. We had nothing to do with this. And then a video surfaced of Nancy Pelosi that was taken by her daughter on January 6th, where she admits that security was her deal and she dropped the ball. And I played the wrong cut before the break, but this is the right cut. Cut 50A.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
You should, because the head of the Capitol Hill police testified that he asked for more and she wouldn't take his call. So there's all sorts, but she was never called. They never called her. So the question is, what kind of consequences should the J6 committee face? I don't think they should face any, to be honest with you. I think that unless they broke the law, which it looks like Liz Cheney may have, if they broke the law, then yes, those people who broke the law, then they need to be face the consequences of their actions. But those who just used political machinations to steer the committee, that's reprehensible, but it's not illegal, and I don't think you can have regress for that. But that's just, how I feel about it. But the question I have for you is, should Trump forgive and forget, or should he seek legal redress in regard to some of the wrongs that were done him, like what happened to the J6 committee? Let's see. Andy in Milford. Andy, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Andy?
Hey, Sandy. I already said it to the whole Kuhner team, but Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you so much.
Sandy, I think the issue is a lot bigger than President Trump or any of us. When you look at the whole totality of what was done to President Trump, serious crimes were committed, and those crimes just simply can't be allowed to go unanswered. And there's another aspect of this, too. The J6ers, there are still, some of the J6ers are still being held in pretrial detention. Some of them were held in pretrial detention for over a year. And just the inhumane conditions that many of them were held in. We've all heard the reports of the cells overflowing with sewage and, just these roach motels that they've been forced to stay in the system. Here's what I think, Sandy. Mm-hmm. I think all these actors, just deep state and whoever else that went after President Trump and committed crimes, I think they should all be rounded up. They should be charged. No bail, no club fed. They should be held in pre-trial detention in the D.C. jail. They should be held in pre-trial detention in the D.C. jail and at other places in those exact same conditions as the J6 political prisoners. And, of course, they're all going to start squealing like a bunch of stuck pigs. And when they do, they need to be reminded, hey, this was good enough for the J6 political prisoners. It's going to be good enough for you. And especially the Democrats that are caught up in that, hey, all those blacks, brown people, minorities that for decades you said you cared about, it was good enough for them. Now it's going to be good enough for you. And there's precedent for this because in some of these major cities, these slumlords that created deplorable conditions for their tenants, in some of those cases, those judges sentenced those slumlords to live for a time in those same deplorable conditions to teach them. And I think this same thing needs to be done to teach all these actors that there has been a human cost to how they've abused the system. And that's my take on it, Sandy.
Well, I know how what you just said appeals to a lot of people because it makes you feel like justice is being done. But the problem that you have is the slumlords you were talking about, they broke the law. So there was a criminal violation, so the judge was able to jail them. In regard to, rounding up everybody, the deep state, are you saying what they did may be reprehensible, but it's not necessarily illegal? You have to, what would you charge them with?
I was actually speaking specifically to those cases where crimes were committed.
Such as? What are you talking about?
Oh, take your pick. Let's start with perjury. There's many of them that committed perjury. They perjured themselves in court. They perjured themselves before the FISA court to get those FISA warrants to go after political opponents. Mm-hmm. And so there's that, and there's also the J6 committee destroyed documents and evidence on their way out the door.
Yeah, if they did, I've heard that just as you have heard that, and that's illegal. Anybody who did that, I think, should face charges. Anybody who committed perjury under oath, I agree with you. There should be consequences there, but the problem is that a lot of what you see done wasn't so much breaking the law as it was immoral or unethical, not necessarily illegal. So I don't think you can have a wholesale prosecution like that. I also don't think that you have the ability to put them in those. I understand it makes you feel good to put them into the same conditions that the J6 prisoners have been in, but that's not feasible. You really just can't do that. You can't pick the jail you're going to put them to because, those people are in jail because what they allegedly did was in D.C., and that's why they're in D.C. So there's a lot of issues with what you're talking about. I get that this makes you feel like justice is being done, and there's a huge injustice that was done to the people on January 6th. But you have to ask yourself, if you start doing this, if you start jailing everybody, then when does it stop? Does it stop, 5 administrations from now? I mean, so when the next administration comes in that's not a conservative administration and they turn around and punish everybody that got in their way, you've got to draw the line. And so my question is, do we draw the line now? Does President Trump draw the line, or are we not ready to do that yet? Do we still have to punish some people? Know in your heart that you cannot make everybody you can't make everything equal. You can't punish everybody for doing a bad thing. It has to meet certain criteria. It has to be actually illegal, and you have to have proof to prove it. There's a burden of proof involved there. And it has to be reasonable, and under the law, it has to be commensurate. It has to be meaning that the punishment has to fit the crime. You can't just punish people because you're so angry at them. And I understand the need for consequences to stop recidivism, meaning to stop people from doing it again. But you got to be very careful. Just because what somebody did was bad on a moral, ethical, intellectual level doesn't mean it was bad illegally or legally, and that it was an illegal action. And you have to keep that in mind. Right now, everybody is still feeling the anger from bad behavior that was in this past year. And in particular with the J6 prisoners, some of them were just, there are some people, and this is the reason why President Trump said he was going to look at pardons on a case-by-case basis. There are some people who did some bad stuff, but there are some people who just, went through the door because the officer opened it and were walking around looking around. And those people have been punished just for being in Washington, D.C., and that's horrible, and they need to be freed. And those are horrific stories, but we don't want to repeat those horrific stories by doing the same thing to people who are on the opposing side of Donald Trump, who may just have been working for somebody, or who may have. Now, there are bad actors, like I think Cassidy Hutchinson lied her ass off, and I think she should, in fact, be prosecuted for perjury if she was under oath. But I don't think that you can do that to everybody because they said a lie in the press or they said a lie in public. That's not the same thing as perjury, and that's not illegal. It's just reprehensible. So I think you have to keep all of that in mind. On the text line, which is 70470, 857 says Ashley Babbitt's murderer needs to be put on trial. I don't disagree with that. I think that was one of those moments that they covered that up. That officer, it needs to be investigated. I think that needs to be investigated and not just swept under the carpet. Maybe the result of the investigation is a charge for manslaughter or a charge of second-degree murder, or maybe it's nothing. But I think it needs to be investigated, and it wasn't. It was just, nobody would even identify him for a while, and they protected him, and he had a bad record on top of it. So I think without a doubt that needs to be investigated and brought to its just conclusion. So I don't disagree with that at all. Thank you for the call, Andy. I appreciate it very much. Let's go to Lisa in New Hampshire. Lisa, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
Sandy, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
To you too, Lisa.
How are you? So look I have a lot to say about this.
Okay.
A lot to say. First of all, punishment doesn't necessarily have to be going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Punishment is bringing to light ethics, right? Isn't the whole Congress and the whole FBI and doesn't everybody live under the umbrella of ethics?
Yeah.
So, okay, so if they investigate and they find out conspiracy is a crime. So when they investigate and find out that 42 people were part of a conspiracy to go after...
No, honey, conspiracy is not a crime. Conspiracy to commit a crime is a crime. So you can conspire with somebody and that's not a crime. But if you're conspiring to commit a separate crime, that is a crime.
Okay, so we all believe that there were crimes committed as far as J6ers, what they did to Trump, the trumped up charges and all of that. And so there were a lot of bad goings on. There were a lot of shenanigans. There were a lot of ethics that went out the window. So as far as I'm concerned, if you can't get them on a crime, if they didn't do anything illegal, but what they did led to this massive mess, right? That there was two different kinds of justice, right? So, if you were a Democrat, you didn't go to jail or get in trouble for this, but if you were a Republican, they came after you for a million different things, for what they did to the Catholics outside of abortion clinics, what they did to J6, a slew of things that they've gone after parents, a million things. There was a conspiracy behind that, and it is illegal to muster up a crime that doesn't really exist or to go after your political opponents, right? So there's a whole bunch of shenanigans that went on for 8 years that they basically got away with. And the reason why they got away with it is because Trump didn't prosecute Hillary. So it started there. And once he didn't prosecute Hillary, they went full speed ahead with Russia and decided that they were going to trash him and, make his life miserable. And I'm sure there were some crimes in there. There was leaking. There was all kinds of stuff that went on. So with the proper investigations as to everything that wasn't right, the punishment has to be that they either lose their jobs or they get embarrassed or they have to go to court and defend themselves and pay for attorneys like they did to everybody else. Look what they did to Trump's lawyers. They went after every one of them and tried to get them disbarred. They put them through look at what they did to Giuliani, and they put Stephen Peter in jail. I mean, they did a lot of bad things that somewhere along the line there were crimes committed and conspiracies to put these people away or to bring them through the lawfare that was going to break them. They probably knew that 90% of them weren't going to go to jail, but they wanted to bankrupt them. Look what they did to Michael Flynn. There were so many wrongdoings that went on. These people have their jobs. They were able to retire with their pensions. They went on to become, multi-million-dollar pundits and, on CNN and MSNBC. Well, they literally trashed and ruined and bankrupted good people because they defended Donald Trump. That's a crime. Conspiracy that led up to all these bad things. There's crimes in there. And if there isn't, they need to be stripped of their titles, their reputations, their pensions, their jobs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go after every single person and every single person committed a crime. They did wrong, and they ripped the country apart while doing it, and the media allowed it. So here's my second part. Unless you, before, 15 years ago, if you were afraid to do something unethical or to commit a crime for several reasons. One, you had a reputation to protect. Two, you were afraid of the media. You didn't want it posted everywhere. Three, you could potentially go to jail. So people walked a very fine moral line. The moral line has been ripped out of D.C. There is no line because they know they got the media in their pocket. And if they're not going to be shamed, and the media is not going to go against them, and they have, 34% of the country that, believes the media, then the moral compass, the line keeps moving. So until we put our foot down and we go after the people who have trashed the system and who have broken the justice system and who conspired and who leaked and who bankrupted these people, not to mention what they did to J6, it will never stop because they have wind under their wings. They think they can do it and get away with it. And until you prosecute, embarrass, fire, punish in any form, it will continue.
Very well stated, Lisa. That was extremely articulate presentation of your point of view, and I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. But don't you think that instead of using, taxpayer dollars and so forth to go after what could be, thousands of people under that perspective, that you let almost like a Darwinian process take over, meaning, people who are identified as that, do you think they're, under the Trump administration, do you think they're going to get a raise? Do you think they're going to get a new job? Do you think they're going to get, they're going to flourish? Or do you think that they're going to probably be treated as outcasts as they try to treat Trump supporters on a social level? And isn't that enough to teach them what they did was wrong?
No.
I'm
sorry. Absolutely not. They cannot be allowed to treat the system, the Justice Department, the government the way they have and get away with it. Sandy, I am adamant about this. Unless there is public shame and punishment and lawyer fees and embarrassment and potential job losses and pensions gone and jail time, this will go on forever. You have to put the fear of God back into the public square. You have to bring the line back to where you'll get to the line, but you won't cross it in fear that you could lose your job, go to jail, get shamed and everything else. These people are evil and they're a cabal, and it's been going on for a very long time. And unless we break it up and we make it public, and there are people who pay, everything that went on in the last 8 years is for naught. Kash Patel being the head of the FBI will be for naught. Pam Bondi, everything that they have done will be for naught if we don't bring it to the surface and say, look it's done. It's over. You played, you had your party, you ruined lives, you all laughed about it, and you all made fun of it, but now the shoe's on the other foot, and we're coming after you. And in my opinion, if you committed a crime, preserve your documents and get an attorney. Because one of them...
Don't you think, though, I mean, you're coming up saying it's over, and from your perspective, from the conservative perspective, it's over. But that doesn't mean it's over, because when there's a change of power and you have these people come in who are on the other side, who are in the bigger group that you want to punish now, then they come in and go, okay, now it's your turn, and then so forth and so on and so forth and so on, and it just goes back and forth forever. Is that how we should be, structuring and living our society? Because that's what I see happening. It's a slippery slope. I understand the need for justice and the need to end it. I'm not sure being punitive ends it. I think it just makes it live continuously. But you don't have to agree with me. We'll be right back. This is Sandy Shack. This is the Kuhner Report. 617-266-6868. 617-266-6868. I love The Grinch. I watch it every year. Have my entire life. Love The Grinch. Text line is 70470. On the text line, let's see, 857 says, Democrats are Lucy, Republicans are Charlie Brown. Until Charlie Brown kicks Lucy in the head for pulling the ball away, Lucy will continue. A lot of people agree with that, and I'm not saying that that's wrong. I think that there is a certain truth to that. On, let's see, 834 says, stop trying to clap these people on the hand. They need to pay. these people are evil and they will never stop. What part of this do you not understand? Okay, you're being a little snarky there, to be honest with you. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't understand your argument. I do. And it's very seductive, this idea that you punish them and, they will stop. And if you punish them, that's what you have to do in order to get them to stop. But while doing that, might you also find, and I think that's going to make you feel good for the time being, but looking ahead, I think there's a danger involved in that. And that is, if you don't draw a line, and say, okay, let's punish the egregious offenders, but everybody else, you did bad stuff, but you're getting a second chance at life. And in this quest, I think to stop this cycle of bad behavior and going after your opponents when you win an election, I think that's the trouble. And I understand the idea of feeling good about punishing people who were mean to you or who were horrible to Donald Trump and I think those who broke the law in doing that absolutely should be prosecuted. But I think trying to do a wholesale, abuse of power, color of the law, civil rights thing, which is what you'd have to do in this case, is not productive in the long run. I think in the long run, you have to stop it. And Donald Trump is the guy who can stop it. He can punish those people that did really bad stuff, that broke the law. I think that needs to be done. I think abuse of power needs to be dealt with. But then I think you say, okay, we're now going to move forward. You get a shot. If you do this again, you're in deep crap. Otherwise, we're moving forward. I think that a certain amount of graciousness is not untoward here. I'm not saying across the board, everything, forgive and forget everything, but I think wholesale punishment is going to do nothing but create a horrible cycle of wholesale punishment. And every time you lose an election, get ready to be punished. I think we have to stop that. That cannot be. I know it doesn't seem fair, especially those people who have suffered under the hands of the last administration. But don't you have to stop it somewhere? I mean, seriously, don't you? If you think I'm being lily-livered, okay, it's not the first time somebody's called me that. But I think adults in the room have to take responsibility and have to say no more. And that includes bad behavior and also includes punishment, saying no more. Let's go to, let me see, who's been waiting on the line. Jeff in Chelsea. Welcome to WRKO. How are you, Jeff?
Oh, Sandy, I'm doing just fine. Now, Sandy, as far as Trump going after his opponents, if Trump goes after his opponents like he most likely wants to, it will backfire because these bureaucrats are so entrenched, they're so ingrained in the media, in these bureaucracies. I mean, even if Trump, let's say, puts Fauci in jail, the pharmaceuticals will kneecap him. If Trump tries to put all the evildoers in jail, the media will kneecap him. And when the next administration comes in there, the bureaucrats will then go after the conservatives. So simply put, all this stuff should have been done 20 to 30 or 40 years ago, where they shouldn't have allowed all these communists to infiltrate the halls of power. But now it's pretty much too late. So Trump is between a rock and a hard place. If Trump does anything, there will be heck to pay. That's the way I see it, because you see, and then if Trump continues on the path, they will label Trump a Francisco Franco and a Augusto Pinochet, and the normies will just shut it off. And then if you really want to go down this path, look at Latin America, to where everything is determined by a bullet. If you're a judge that goes against the cartels, you get a bullet, gold or lead. Do you want to go down that path? It can go more extreme. We can have a literal division in this country between the left-wing zombie states like Massachusetts and areas, and then sane America. I mean, this path can get really, really ugly. Look at the first Civil War under Abraham Lincoln in 1863. So
I agree with you. I agree with you, Jeff. Exactly. I think there needs to be a compromise. I think there has to be a bar set. You know, people who broke the law, people who actually broke the law need to be criminally held responsible. People who did things that were unethical or that are civil liability, sue them in the courts, which is what Donald Trump is doing. I think that's appropriate. But to start digging around doing wholesale abuse of power type of prosecutions, I think, is asking for trouble. And I think it's not going to serve us in the long run for all the reasons you were just stating. Is that where does it stop? I don't think it does stop. My problem is I don't think that stops. I think that gets worse and worse and worse to the point where you have, like you were saying, like Stalinist Russia, where you can't say anything because in 2 years you could be sued for it, or this decision is going to be sued. You have to be really careful. Let's pick who's prosecuted and who's not. Not wholesale punishment. We'll be right back. This is the Kuhner Report. This is Sandy Shack sitting for Jeff Kuhner, and this time every week we have the Kelly Financial Report, and we're going to speak with Kelly, CEO and co-founder of Kelly Financial Services. How are you doing this week, Kelly?
Good morning, Sandy. Merry Christmas.
To you too, Kelly. Merry Christmas, or Feliz Navidad, I think is what Mike was just telling you when we came back in here. So.
Absolutely. I have to say, I love this Friday morning call-in with you and Jeff. It always kicks my Friday off with a good vibe.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Always.
We love talking to you.
Well, thank you. Tomorrow, speaking of tomorrow,
yes,
we will be focused on those people contemplating when to retire, as it will be both confusing and concerning. If you're wondering whether you are ready to retire, don't go it alone. Our advisors at Kelly Financial will discuss your goals and provide you with the planning strategies and reassurances you need to begin writing this next exciting chapter in your life. We also have a free investor guide called The Changing Story of Retirement that might provide the answers to some of your retirement planning questions. For the guide or for a free consultation with a Kelly advisor, give us a call or email kelly@kellyfinancial.org. Do tune in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for Safe Money Strategies Radio right here on WRKO, or go to our website for our radio rewind. Sandy, again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you, your family, the Kuhner family, everyone at WRKO, and all of Kuhner Country.
Thank you, Kelly. Right back at you. And people are not going to believe me, but I actually put the show on, and because they think on Saturday she doesn't listen to the radio because it's like, carrying coals to Newcastle. But I listen every Saturday, and I'm going to be listening tomorrow too. If you want to set up a complimentary retirement consultation with Kelly and a Kelly advisor, you can call 888-800-1881. That's 888-800-1881. Or you can email Kelly at kellyfinancial.org. That's Kelly at kellyfinancial.org. There's such lovely people there. I think you'd like it if you call them. So we're talking about retribution and of Donald Trump and the new Trump administration and the conservatives, basically, for what they've been through, and the J6ers too, from the horrible things that have happened in the past few years. And I wanted to share a text with you. And the text line is 70470. It's 508. It says, Sandy, if your parents or kids were in a DC gulag for the past 4 years, you'd be singing a different tune. Without a doubt. I completely agree with that. I would be out for vengeance, probably. Absolutely, positively. But that's why, for instance, you don't have the family of victims pick the punishment for people. They can put their 2 cents in with a judge, but they're not the ones who decide and there's a reason for that. It's because you're emotionally involved in something horrible, and you're going to be responding from your gut and not from your intellect. It's up to those people who are not victims of the crime. We want to hear what the victims have to say. We want to hear what they want and think about it and incorporate it in what you do and what your actions are. But you don't necessarily want to follow it wholesale because it's based on emotion and not necessarily on justice. That's why, you don't have members of the family passing sentence. You don't do it. That's why you don't do it. I'm not saying that their opinion is invalid. It's absolutely valid. But there's more than one perspective in sentencing. You have to weigh a lot of things besides the pain of the victims. And I know that sounds cold-hearted, but that's what the justice system does. It tries to incorporate all aspects into a fair and just decision. I would be furious. I would be infuriated if one of my family members was incarcerated. Without a doubt, I would still be sitting outside the jail screaming and shouting. But I'm not. My family members aren't there, so I can look at it a little bit more dispassionately than they can. I don't expect them to. I don't expect you to if you have a family member there. But that's my response to you. I'm not unsympathetic to what they go through. I'm sympathetic to anybody who's been harmed. I have dealt with issues myself in the past 4 years, as has Jeff, that we've been treated differently based upon our political views. I understand the ire, and I understand the need to make sure it never happens again. My perspective is that one of the ways we make sure it doesn't happen again is that we stop retaliation within reason. I'm not saying all retaliation. I think absolutely. And the J6ers, I think President Trump is going to deal with that. And he said, some of those people are going to have lawsuits against the federal government, and they should. But I think if you just turn around and the knee-jerk reaction go after everybody every election, there's a problem there. I mean, it's never going to end. And you're going to get whiplash from what it's right to do, what's not right to do. That doesn't mean that the big dogs, the ones who created the most havocs, the one that broke the law, that they're not punished. You punish them, but you don't do this wholesale party group disagreed with me punishment. That's what I'm saying. So I think you're responding to what you want me to be saying as opposed to what I'm actually saying. And you want me to be somebody you can argue with, so you want me to be saying no punishment for anybody. That's not what I'm saying, and I've never said that. I'm simply saying you have to draw a line and you have to be measured about it to stop this from devolving, as our last caller said, because that's what will happen. It will devolve into a horrible, horrible situation where we are like the People's Republic of China, or we are like, Stalinist Russia, where anybody who disagrees with anything is executed. That's what we need to get away from. And we're not even near that right now, but there's a really steep slope that heads right into that environment. And you have to stop it before you start sliding down it. That's what I'm saying. Vicky from Lowell, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Vicky?
Very much. It's so great to talk with you. I just love how you dig deep into everything.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I just agree so much. I don't think Donald Trump should get involved with all sorts of stuff, the prosecutions and things. I think, I always like to pull back, from the earth and start looking down and say, it's just a world full of human beings, and this kind of thing's going to be going on for a long time, and it always has. But I think that he's just going to be surrounded by a lot of intelligent people, and I think that these intelligent people probably would like to do things in a common sense way, and I think that whole his line of the common sense way, I think that that's very strong and important, and
I agree with you.
And I think, I could just see him standing up in front of the American people at some point, maybe after he's inaugurated, and just, reassuring everyone and say, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna move on. We're gonna let this go, and we're gonna manage, the very worst things that we need to manage. And we'll keep you informed, it's just like everybody has to go through their own. The wrongdoers of the world, all of us are, but some more than others, and we just have to, reap the consequences of our behavior, and
no, I
hope that yeah.
But it's interesting. Do you agree with President Trump bringing civil lawsuits against those networks and media outlets that have slandered him?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's appropriate. That's a remedy that is open to everybody. It's open to me. It's open to you. It's how you deal with that situation. And so I hear a lot of criticism against President Trump for doing that. The press is saying, it's going to have a chilling effect. On what? On lying? Because you're not supposed to lie if you're the press, and that's what this is about. They lied about him. They're getting sued for it. And I think that that's appropriate, and that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to, if somebody lies about you, you bring a civil suit for slander or defamation, whatever libel, whatever works in the context of the idiosyncrasies of the actual case. That's how you do it. So I have no issues with him doing that whatsoever. And where I'm drawing the line is I don't think President Trump should get involved in what the DOJ is going to do next. If the DOJ is going to bring criminal charges against people, I don't think the president should be involved in that. That should be just the DOJ making decisions on people who broke the law. That's how our justice system works. That's how it's supposed to work. That's what protects all of our rights. The defendant's rights, our rights, the witness rights, anybody in the environment. It protects, if somebody else is getting their rights protected, it means your rights are also being protected. So I jealously guard the justice system. And I think that as long as the DOJ is prosecuting people based on what their actions were and not based on their political views, I have no problem with it. But to do that, we have to make sure, and President Trump knows this because he's given no indication of being involved with the Department of Justice so far, that that's how it's supposed to work. And that would make me feel very comfortable about whatever repercussions various people were going to be facing based upon their actions. As long as you don't have wholesale blanket prosecutions like you did with the poor people who are J6. Like I said, some of those people were put in jail because they were walking through the Capitol. There was no consideration given to what they were actually doing. It was a wholesale prosecution. I don't believe in that. But that would make me comfortable. Would it make you comfortable, Vicki?
Yes. I mean, that's exactly why I'm listening to you, because you drill down into this stuff, and I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. And that's why, you're here, and that's why we listen to you. And Donald Trump, I think, is surrounded by a lot of important people like that are intelligent to, guide us in the right direction back again, because there is a right way and a wrong way. And we've just been imploded with, Monday, just with all of the corruption.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's been horrible, but I think we have a chance now at cleaning out the swamp. I think we really do.
For the next 4 years, we certainly do, and I'm just going to trust everybody, because I know that there's a lot of smart people that are going to be in charge now. It's like that. It's like that big table, the Lego, the Lego city that you've been trying to build for 15 years, and then one person comes and just knocks it. We all know that. So
we do. Thank you so much for the call, Vicki. I really appreciate it. It was very thoughtful. And I share your optimism going forward. Let's talk to Mel in New York. Mel, welcome to WRKO. How are you, Mel?
Oh, yes. Good morning, Sandy, and a Merry Christmas to you and the staff, to Mike, Jeff, and all the family. Yes, thank you, Sandy, for taking my call. Sandy, if I were a Democrat, I wouldn't want to be prosecuted either, because it seems to be, or Rhino, because it seems to be that those two factions of our government did things that were not only unethical but criminal. But if we don't take these things seriously and make people pay for them, just for an example, those men at Lexington and Concord who resisted the British government for all the punishment they levied against free living Americans at that time in 1775, if they had not stood up and got seriously and dealt with the problem that they were dealing with from the government of Britain, they would have been just rolled over, and things would have just exacerbated and got further and further worse for them to live under. If we don't take this in hand and deal with it
I'm going to hold you over, Mel, because we're up against a break and we don't have any control over that. We have to break, and I want you to finish your thought. We'll be right back. 617-266-6868. This is Sandy Shack. This is the Kuhner Report. This is Sandy Shack filling in for Jeff Kuhner here on the Kuhner Report. Before the break, we were talking to Mel from New York. I'm sorry we had to go to break, Mel, but I have you back. So please finish your thought. Mel?
Yes, Sandy.
Please finish your thought.
Yes, and as far as Lisa goes, I don't agree with Lisa 100%. I agree with Lisa 10,000%. We're sending money over to Ukraine by the billions, and I don't care if there's 10,000 people who are in the government on the left side that took part in all this mishap, all this chaos that we had to live under for the last 4 years. 4 years that I'm willing to keep working to pay my taxes to make sure that there's accountability, there's punishment for all the wrongdoing that they've done. I'm sure there's millions and millions of other Americans that feel the same way as I do.
I have no doubt.
I pay my taxes as long as it's being spent to bring these criminals to justice. It's not retribution. This is called justice. You break if I go downtown and break the law, I don't care where I'm at, I break the law, I expect that there's going to be consequences that I have to face. There's no two-tier justice system of justice.
Mel, nobody's saying nobody's saying that anybody who actually broke the law should not be punished. Nobody has said that at any point this morning. What we're talking about is not necessarily people who've broken the law. What we're talking about is people who haven't broke the law, who maybe what they did was unfair, but it wasn't illegal. That's what we're talking about. It's retribution for not doing that. That's where the line is. We're not talking about people who actually broke the law. Nobody has said that they shouldn't be punished. Nobody. So, but what we're talking about is not vengeance for breaking the law. It's vengeance for having a different opinion or doing something that's unfair. Is that reprehensible? Yes. Should there be some social consequences for that? Yes. Do you have legal consequences for that? No. That's what we're saying. And if you persecute people for doing something that's legal, maybe not fair, but not illegal, that's when you have a problem. And that's where you start to disappear into a chaotic, despotism system. Mel, that's what I'm saying.
Now, if you're an accomplice to a law, to a crime, where the media seems to be, because that's all. I mean, the Democrat Party owns the media in this country. We all know that.
Lying to the public is not illegal, Mel. It's unethical. It's immoral, but it's not illegal.
But if there's an end to the means of your lying for someone else to break a law, which laws have been broken by those in Congress.
That's too. I get you want that to be true, Mel, but it isn't. That's not how being an accomplice works. It's too tortured. I understand that you want it to be true because you want to hold them accountable. We all want to hold them accountable, but it's not. Unless they actually slander somebody, they can lie. It's reprehensible, but they can do it. The way that we show our disdain is by what's happening to MSNBC now. Their ratings are so low that they're cutting all their anchors' pay, and my guess is they're going to be sold on the auction block, and hopefully Elon Musk will buy it, and then we'll all get a good laugh, and it will be pretty interesting to see what they promote, what their programming is. But it's not illegal to lie. You can't hold, then who decides what's a lie and what's the truth? Well, it's the truth. It's the truth. Not necessarily. So it's too much of a slippery slope. You cannot go there. I know it makes you feel good to go there. I understand that. It makes all of us feel good to go there. But if you hold justice up the way you say you do, you can't do that. You have to find the people who broke the law, or find the people who've done something actionable, like Donald Trump has done. He is civilly suing people who committed slander or defamation. That's what you're supposed to do. He's doing what you're supposed to do. And then if somebody broke the law, that's up to law enforcement and the Department of Justice, and to go after those people who actually broke a codified law. That's what you're supposed to do. If somebody did something that you don't like, that's really disgusting or is, immoral, if it's not breaking the law, there's nothing you can do about it except for let your disdain be known. And, like I said, for the media, that means don't go there. Don't support them. Don't support their advertisers. That's what you do. That's how it works. And the natural marketplace takes care of them, as it is MSNBC. So that's how you deal with it. You can't hold them, you can't punish them as accomplices, because then we can all be punished for accomplishing something, next to somebody. I mean, it's just, there has to be a legal line, and it's way before what you want it to be, Mel.
Yeah. No, it's running. It's good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mel. So anyway, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it very much. Let's speak with, who can we get in here? David from Boston. David, welcome to WRKO. How are you?
I'm fine, Sandy. Good morning, even though it's snowing, but it's a good morning when it's snowing at Christmas time. But
Mike and I both just looked up for the first time in 4 hours and realized it was snowing. Neither of us realized it was snowing. It was like, oh my God, when did that happen? So sorry. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, regarding Washington D.C., commonly called the swamp, Sandy, Jeff, many times he's harkened back to his years in Washington, D.C. when he worked for I believe, the Washington Times.
Yep.
And I know you've mentioned that in your past years ago, you worked down in Washington, D.C. also.
Yep, I have, yep.
So what I was wondering, and I think Kuhner country would be curious to this. They probably never wondered about it, but you and Jeff have such a good working relationship with each other. Did you guys actually meet years ago when you both worked down in Washington, D.C.?
Nope. I met Jeff when I used to work for a different show that was on in the afternoons, and I had I used Jeff as a guest fill-in host for that particular show, and that's when I first met Jeff.
What, down in Washington,
No,
D.C.?
here in Boston.
Oh, okay.
I never knew Jeff in Washington.
Oh, okay. Were you down in Washington around the same time Jeff was down there?
Nope.
Oh, okay. That answers the question then. And I just was wondering about it because you guys have such a close working relationship. I was wondering how long ago you guys became friends and everything, you know?
No, we do by working together up here in Boston, Dave. So I hope that satisfies your curiosity. So did you have anything to say about the fact that, we are making decisions now how to go forward with people who have persecuted Donald Trump?
Sandy, I feel like and with all due respect, I'm not trying to bash you, Sandy. Sandy, you do an excellent job, but
no, feel free.
I feel like it's premature even talking about this because a lot of people still are wondering if Trump's ever even going to be inaugurated with these drones.
You think the drones are going to stop President Trump from being inaugurated? I don't think that we need to worry about that in regard to it. I'll be honest with you. I was going to talk about the drones today. Didn't get a chance. Didn't have enough time. But I think they're U.S. military, just to put it right out there. And I think we're okay. See you in the new year. This is the Kuhner Report.